And safe to say, she's absolutely spot on. Like, one thing that I've always said, and I don't know if I've said it on this podcast or if I've said it enough on this podcast, but beauty is largely a matter of proportions. So a lot of times you find that
the royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man whose sickness for the thickness prevents him from skinny dipping. He is also a man who may include jumping to conclusions to his cardio routine. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. And I am here because there's a bunch of misunderstanding. And you would think that that shouldn't be a particular theme for the episode, but I kid you not, that is probably one of the most concrete ways to describe a lot of what I am dealing with in this episode. Because there's a woman that is giving advice to women who are claiming that she's a pick-me for saying it, and I think that's a misunderstanding. And there's another woman who claims that you no longer doing 50-50 with your man and making sure that he pays the bills will be what saves your relationship. And I do think that that is in and of itself a misunderstanding. Or, to be more specific, a misinterpretation. Now, that one I definitely do need to talk about quite a bit, and that is why that is going to be the main topic. And, that means that the other bit I'm going to be talking about in like a minute or so. But before I get there, I first want to say thank you so much for listening. I hope you listen all the way till the end. And should you like what it is that you're listening to, should you not like it, should you have a different form of feedback, or should you want to suggest a potential topic and or guest for the podcast, then the DMs are always open. The social media links are usually in the description, and I would be more than happy to attend to them and handle them accordingly. And if you feel like getting to the description is too much work, then you can of course just listen all the way till the end. I always mention the social media there, and you can reach out to me afterwards. Alright, but all in all, I thank you so much for listening, and I hope you listen all the way till the end, and you can give me your feedback after, right? And with that said, I probably should be moving it on to what it is that I plan to discuss. But before I do that, I just wanted to make sure that I have alerted those of you that may not know. Usually I tend to do a couple of weeks worth of episodes, but usually after about the 12 to maybe 14 week mark, I usually take a break. And that break is usually characterized by shorter, less edity, no instrumentally episodes. And those will be coming in about 2 weeks. Because I have done my run of over 20 episodes. I'm about to hit the 24 mark in about a week or so. So in case there's something that you would like discussed in a singular topic fashion, where I just focus on the one topic and nothing else, then this is a pretty good time to send in your queries. And like I always say, the social media is there. Granted, you can also drop your comment on Spotify, because I know there's a reply section. So if you send it there, I could also end up finding it, and it might end up making it to one of these episodes. But with that said, I will leave the future matters to the future and move on with the present and talk about the idea of women's bodies. Now, I'm not about to body shame women, and I know that the moment you hear a man talking about a woman's body or women's bodies, you'd assume that we're about to body shame women or say that we want women that look like A, B, C, or D. But the truth of it is, in this particular episode, I don't intend on doing that. Maybe I can do it in a different episode, but not necessarily this one. This one's a little bit more interesting than that. Now, there's a lady on IG by the name of Steph O'Sherry, who is actually an OnlyFans content creator who hopped online recently to speak on the fact that men actually don't like women's bodies the way you think they do. And upon hearing that, you'd think that maybe she's about to body shame or talk some shit about women, or talk about how guys look at women in a very objectifying way, blah blah blah. But it's actually none of that. It's something that I found to be particularly interesting and maybe even a little profound to some people. So I'm gonna let the clip where she says that play, then I can get into my thoughts on it, because I feel like she got some flack from women online on this, and yet I don't think it was really warranted, and I do feel like there is something to be said here. So without further ado,
I recently came across this video of a man talking about the fact that most men are okay with fat girls. It's not really the fatness that they have an issue with, it's the build, like the build type. Okay, so if you're just bad built, you're bad built. And as much as I hate to say that that's true, I do think it's true. I don't think guys really give a fuck if you're fat. I'm fat, and I've throughout my life had no issues getting male attention or having access to men, I guess. It's never been a problem of mine, and I truly do think it's because of the way that I'm built. I have a good build. Thank God. Thank fucking God. Honestly, I'm just gonna say it. Thank fucking God. Okay? Because the way that I gain weight, if it only went to one area, like let's say it only went to my stomach and my legs were just, you know, I would look like I'm walking on stilts, and that just would not be good. And so every day I'm so thankful that I'm built well.
Okay. If there's one thing that I like, it's the fact that she thanks God for her build, because, well, when you get into an industry like that one, your build makes a lot of sense, and it is very, very relevant to the kind of work you do, the kind of gigs you can get, and so on and so forth. But anyways, I'm not supposed to be talking about her OF career or anything like that. I'm really more interested in what she was saying about, you know, just women's beauty and their bodies. Now, a bunch of women were busy talking about how, oh, you know, this isn't really it, this is giving pick me, this almost sounds like body shaming. If we dissented men, then we'd appreciate ourselves for the fact that we're beautiful regardless, blah blah blah. And the thing is, this isn't even meant to like make every woman feel like they're beautiful or anything of that sort. She was reiterating a point on how guys view women as far as bodies are concerned, and safe to say, she's absolutely spot on. Like, one thing that I've always said, and I don't know if I've said it on this podcast or if I've said it enough on this podcast, but beauty is largely a matter of proportions. So a lot of times you find that there's some women that will be looked at as beautiful and others not as beautiful, not because they have a great body or a bad body, or they are more attractive to one side versus the other, but mainly because of the fact that they're well proportioned as far as the chest and as far as the booty is concerned. So if you are someone that's like, oh, you know, I'm not good looking because I'm big, there's a chance that maybe you aren't as good looking body wise, mainly because you just have proportions that seem very off. So like, say for example, maybe you have small tits and your stomach is like really coming out, or like you have no booty along with all of those too. So it's very common for someone to come out and think that they are unattractive because they don't have like a skinny, slim, curvy figure, which, I kid you the hell not, doesn't appeal to every man. Like, there's guys that actually love big babes. There are guys that are really, really into BBWs. But in big, beautiful women, you have to remember that the second B in BBW is beautiful. So if you're just a big babe and you look like you let yourself go, then of course the guy won't like you. So maybe if some women would probably accept the fact that it's a proportions game, not necessarily a size game, then they could probably, just maybe, try and make adjustments that would suit that. Now, don't get me wrong, I know that not every baby is going to be curvy and not every baby is going to be thick the way I like, or every baby is going to be skinny the way I like, but it's not necessarily just about you having the figure 8 thing that, you know, every single person used to like back in the day, or the slim curvy look that's in fashion right now. A lot of those things are very dependent on what the beauty trends are for women. So like right now, there's a lot of women that are heavy into weight loss just because they're trying to look like, you know, the Ozempic version of beauty that seems to be pushed nowadays. Yet at the same time, like, there's guys like me that love thick women. There's guys that love BBWs. So you don't necessarily have to appeal to the general masses when you can appeal to a certain particular niche. The only thing is, if you do pay attention to your proportions, then you can appeal a lot more to that niche, as opposed to if you didn't and you looked like, you know, you let yourself go, or, you know, you need to eat a sandwich or something like that. Just saying. And with that said, I also do want to reiterate the fact that beauty isn't always just a physical thing. Sometimes you just having proper confidence and a great personality can bag you guys. And even though guys will say that that's bullshit, it does actually work to some degree. But don't put all of your eggs in that basket. Just try and spread it out a little bit, and your chances might actually improve by quite a bit. But if you do put effort in all of them, they will definitely improve. And with that said, I am going to leave it at that and move it on to our main topic of this episode. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this one I kind of feel like I'm a little underqualified for in a couple of different ways. And I know me saying that I'm underqualified for this, yet I'm discussing it, seems a little bit weird, but I felt like it was one of those things that I just needed to talk about, because it's something that I feel might affect quite a number of women and can annoy a couple of guys. And this is actually in regards to something that a woman said online. Now, about a year or two ago, I covered a story where a lady who on IG goes by Afrofeminine Muse was busy talking about how you should let your man be paying for stuff, and how she decided to stop paying for things and she let her husband pay for everything, and apparently the relationship is so much better. And in a lot of the stuff that she talks about in regards to marriage and relationships, she normally kind of tends to angle things in that direction, which I've always found to be particularly interesting. But it's her shtick, and she's kind of done it for a while, and whatever flies, I guess, on the internet. So not too long ago, I stumbled across one of her videos where she was busy talking about how she needed to de-influence married corporate women from going 50-50 in marriages. Now, I will admit that I have neither been married nor am I currently married, so I could say that I am underqualified for this. But considering that there was some way that she was trying to explain this, and the fact that I think that what she was saying also does apply to regular relationships, I did feel like this is something actually worth questioning. So I am going to let her speak on how she needs to de-influence married corporate women from going 50-50, and then after handling some of the comments, I can get into my thoughts on it. So without further ado,
this is gonna make some people mad. Man is a source of income. Porn industry is projected to be a $93.37 billion industry in 2023 with a CAGR of 9.2%. I don't know who's funding that business. Financial provision didn't matter to me when I was a newlywed. I had my MBA, corporate career, Miss Independent. I could take care of myself. Still, I remember one time being called out of a Sub-Saharan regional meeting which I was presenting, and my son's school teacher told me there was an issue. I had to leave that meeting and go and attend to him. Over time, I became resentful and overwhelmed, and I remember even hubby telling me he doesn't feel I respect him. I asked myself, if I'm going 50-50 helping to provide, I have a very high demanding career, I have to come home, be a wife, be a mother and a lover at night. I felt played. Now I'm in my 40s, ex-corporate, inventing my career. I feel safe and fully provided for by the same man. I believe that your hubby is gonna take care of a woman. Why not you? Man fully providing for you is not about control. Any secure woman who's done the self-work knows that men love to take care, to provide and protect for women they feel romantic towards, not giving you options such that you are able to live a life of ease, are able to make your money, use it for your own goals and dreams. If you want to reinvent yourself, you have options. And of course, in exchange, you get to be available for romance and connection for your hubby, because you're not tired 24/7. Woman deserves to feel safe, protected, and cared for, regardless of whether she has her 9 to 5, rather be 50-50 and build a man, or be fully provided for.
Okay. A man is a source of income. That is a wild statement. No wonder I can get why people got mad at her for saying that. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I disagree with her or that I do, but, well, to some degree, she is actually saying the truth. A man can be a source of income, and, girlfriend allowance kind of proves it, alimony kind of proves it, spousal support kind of proves it. So she's not exactly wrong there. But there's a bunch of other shit that I do feel like she might not be entirely right about. But before I can get into my thoughts on that, let me just get into the comments for a little bit. So the first comment that I found said, and I quote, "Each relationship is different. No one formula fits all. The two should talk it out before marriage." End quote. Which is a very balanced and level-headed idea that I believe should be taken up by many, many people. Like, a lot of relationships try to run around and avoid the whole discussion on finances and money. And complicated of a discussion as it is, I do believe that it's a discussion that needs to be had. Otherwise, you tend to hear more and more of these stories where people are like, oh, after I lost my job, my babe left me, or my wife started treating me like crap. And yet, the truth of it is, you guys didn't have that discussion of, okay, so what happens if I'm not the one earning? Do you have a problem with chipping in for bills? Do you have any ideas on what you would do with your money if you're not spending it on covering the costs for the house and some of the other costs that we have? Like, do you have any idea on how we were to use the money if we were to split it 50-50? Would I handle one or the other? Or to even flip the genders around, do you have a problem with a woman paying the bills in the household, or do you as a man prefer to be the one that is providing 100%? Like, those are discussions that need to be had. But then at some point, some woman is always going to want to take the road where they're like, no, it's the man's role to cover the bills. And someone actually commented on this comment and said, and I quote, "You are a man, so I don't blame you. But I need to understand which part of giving birth you can help women with." End quote. And I'm not gonna lie, this is one of those comments and one of those statements that I find to be one of the most annoying, and I hate it so much. Mostly because this is one of the typical cop-outs that a bunch of women usually like to use whenever it comes to them and trying to weasel out of the whole 50-50 discussion, or just chipping in financially when it comes to a relationship or a marriage. Of which, actually, considering that I am talking about relationships and marriages, I'll just give the typical marriage disclaimer, which is, considering that I have neither been married nor am I currently married, anything that I say in regards to marriage is purely speculative and not to be taken as absolute fact or pure advice. This information is coming from someone who is not married, so you can take it with a pinch of salt and a dash of aromat. And with that disclaimer given, I can continue. So yeah, as I was saying, a bunch of women like to use this whole discussion of, oh, but do you help when it comes to giving birth? And the reason I hate this entire thought process around a man should provide because the woman is giving birth is because you're basically using nature as a cop-out for not wanting to chip in towards the typical elements of being an adult. And normally, whenever people try to bring up arguments like these ones, that's when I'll usually now come with a comeback, which is, okay, so let's say, for example, you're unable to give birth to children. Should I now make you start contributing to bills? Or if you say that you don't want to have kids, should I now tell you that you should start contributing to bills? And I kid you the hell not, there's no woman that'll be like, you know what, I'm perfectly okay with that. Not unless if they are the type to be like, okay, if I'm ensuring that you're having kids, then you have to pay for bills. So this is one of the most useless thought processes that I find whenever people are busy having this discussion on the division of bills whenever it comes to relationships. But with that said, let me move on to another comment which said, and I quote, "This culture will protect children and cultivate a culture of family." End quote. And I don't know if I can entirely agree with this. Normally, I probably would and be like, oh, at least the mother gets a chance to spend a bunch of time with the kids, and that means that they can grow and develop a lot better and blah, blah. But the truth of the matter is, I have seen an example where that isn't necessarily the case. So let me give a disclaimer, and this is where my whole speculative bit kind of comes from. I believe that if you have a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home woman who is basically completely being provided for, then to some degree it might be a good idea if you have boys or if you have sons as opposed to if you have daughters. And I say this because there could be instances where if the daughter grows up seeing the mother just chilling at home doing, the better part of nothing productive, it may make her think, or it may give her the impression that even for her, as she grows up and she becomes an adult, she should look forward to doing the same thing. And while it's not exactly a bad idea, there's not that many guys that are trying to do that to a babe without some level of control or maybe some level of toxicity implied on top of that. But then again, like I said, highly speculative, maybe it's just me. So let me move it on to the next comment which I saw, which actually intrigued me quite a bit, because even this lady decided to comment on it, where some guy was like, and I quote, "What's your money for? Logically, without emotions," end quote. And I kid you not, this same woman that was busy talking about de-influencing married corporate women and was trying to sound all nice, straight up went and commented and answered, "Ask your wife please, my man doesn't need my money," end quote. Fam. Like, I think this was the comment that just made me think, you know what, I think I definitely have to get into this because I do definitely have some thoughts on it. But all in all, let me just leave it at that and get into my thoughts on it because I have eaten quite a bit of time already. Now, first of all, I was about to go off and be like, this woman doesn't know her shit, blah, blah, blah. But when I went and I checked her profile, I saw that she had listed herself as a certified, and I kid you not, certified relationship coach. Now, I thought that was bullshit. Then I went and I Googled and I realized that you can even get a certificate as well as a diploma in relationship coaching, which is wild. Honestly, I wouldn't have thought that. So maybe whatever it is that I'm saying is an absolute pile of bullshit because I am dealing with someone that is probably certified and trained, and there's guys like me that have zero training at all. And I don't even have that much relationship experience. So maybe what I'm chatting is a bunch of bullshit. But anyways, let me leave that aside because I don't think it's entirely relevant to this discussion. And speaking about things that are highly relevant to this discussion, let's talk about that porn stat that she gave about how the porn industry is worth, $93.3 billion or something as of, I think, maybe 2030. That was what she was trying to say. And, there's like a growth rate of like 9.2%. Now, normally you would think that, she dropped a stat. That means that, she's dropping real knowledge. And then you think about it for a second and you're like, this is highly pointless. Like, what the fuck does presenting a stat on porn have to do with married men and or their ability to pay for shit? Like, is it just me or does that just seem completely pointless? Because the truth of it is, like, fine, yes, there's a lot of men that are paying for porn, and yes, the overwhelming majority of people that pay for porn are men, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're married men, and it doesn't necessarily mean that most men are spending money on porn. Like, a lot of that money and a lot of that value of the porn industry is based off of a bunch of different things, which I don't want to get into for the sake of time. But her mentioning that was absolutely meaningless. But I guess her dropping a stat is probably how she shows that she's knowledgeable about some shit. But either way, there was the part where she was saying that, a bunch of people were mad at her for saying that a man is a source of income. Personally, I'm not. What I'm mad about is her assuming that all men are a source of income. Because when you look at it, there's a lot of people that do actually provide 100% and their wives get to live la vida loca and all and enjoy their money on their own. But there's also a lot of couples, a lot of married people who have started families, who have basically been doing life, basically chipping in on each other. And it's not like it's a pure 50-50. Sometimes it's a 70-30 or a 20-80 or something this, that, and the other. The point is, they don't mind chipping in when the other is a little bit low, or they do even just a full split 50-50 and keep it like that. But when you think about it and assume that if you now decide to let it go to that point, then the man will be able to take it up and your relationship might improve. In some instances, that man might take up all of the bills but might start mistreating the woman. We've heard tons of stories of this. There are instances where that man ends up getting another babe because he feels like his partner is useless. Like, for example, if she stops working and she lets him basically take care of all the bills. There's other instances where men basically take it as permission for them to go and sleep around because since he pays all the bills in the house, he gets to have his fun the way he wants. Like, this assumption that if you decide to let your man pay your bills, it'll be so much better for you is a very, very big assumption. Like, I can get it worked for her and that's great and all, and it might work for some people, but it doesn't work for every woman and every married couple. Then, let's assume that this works, okay? Let's say that you can basically quit your job if you're a babe, or you can decide to take up your 9 to 5 and be comfortable with the fact that the man is paying all the bills and everything, is being based on the assumption that men love to take care of the women that they're romantically attracted to. And you're assuming that that romantic attraction is going to be there all the time for your woman. And I'm sorry to tell you all this, but just the same way women can fall out of love with a man, men can fall out of love with a woman. Hell, they might even start to see the woman a little bit less in some instances, and for some, you might find that the man might be a narcissist in hiding, and the moment she decides to do that, that's when he decides to let his pure narcissism shine bright, where he can get to mistreat the babe and be as selfish as he absolutely wants. So when you kind of think about it, I don't know if that underlying theory actually holds as much water, especially considering that romance is, in some instances, a very finite thing for couples. Then also, let's say that this works, okay? Let's assume that you have completely offset all of the provision to him so that he can handle the bills and you can be your own quote-unquote feminine self, and you decide that you want to quit your job and start a business, or you want to enjoy your 9 to 5 and enjoy the money that it comes with. Let's play out either one of these scenarios. You decide to go into either of those, and after a while of you trying to develop yourself in that point, considering that this is someone who did speak about reinventing her career and all, like, let's say you decide to go down that route and enjoy your money while you're doing your own thing. And let's say that you become so good at it that you end up being elevated and elevated and elevated because, now you're doing it because you actually want to, not because you have to because of bills. You may eventually get to that point where you may have to hold yourself back, because if you continue pushing a little bit further, you will end up giving him a lot less attention, or you will end up continuing further and end up back in the same exact situational problem that you were with your man, whereby this guy feels like he's not getting enough of you and you may not be as romantic to him. Let me explain. Let's assume that you quit your job and you start a business, and it's a particularly nice business and it was done at a strategic time or a strategic location, and it picks up and it grows exponentially. And you get to a point where either you can expand the business and take it elsewhere because you've identified an opportunity to go and set it up somewhere else, or you can take in much larger orders which will require you to do a bit more traveling, go and try and utilize economies of scale to get better pricing and shit. And then at that point you start to realize that you're spending less time with your man and more time on that business. What are you going to do? Are you going to dial down the operations of that business, or are you going to dial down the time that you spend with your man? Let's assume that, like in her case, you become a coach and you have speaking events and you grow that business. You end up doing speaking events outside of the country and you're being called to, let's say, Ghana, South Africa, Nigeria, and so on. What happens to the whole bit about you being more romantic for your man because now you are not doing any of the provision? What happens to that? That's a situation, and that's a point where no one is trying to look at, because at the end of the day, all you're trying to do, and instead of going round in circles, is just admit that you just want your man to basically be paying the bills and you do nothing. Like, you just prefer that the man pays, and you're not trying to acknowledge that. You're just trying to find different ways of going around and talking about whatever benefits are there. And in playing out those benefits, you end up seeing that in the long run, you end up in the same situation with your man. It's just that now he's in that same situation, but he's handling all of the bills and you're handling none of them. At which, now the question I ask is, does it make the situation better for your man, or does it bring him back to the same exact point? Either way, I don't see it changing too much, and as such, I don't see it as a particularly viable reason as to why you should tell people to stop approaching the idea of 50-50. And to kind of conclude all of this, what I am trying to say is, this, just like many others, doesn't fully justify not going 50-50 today for most couples. Alright, I'm not arguing for 50-50 or against 50-50. Frankly, whatever it is that you decide to do with your partner is entirely up to you, but we need to stop demonizing it. We need to stop making it seem like it's such a bad thing that people can do. It's how so many people have lived, and it's how so many people have survived out here, and it's how a lot of families have been built. Why speak so much trash about it just because you're not the biggest fan of it? But anyways, then again, like I said, maybe it's because I'm not married, maybe I don't understand jack shit, maybe I'm too bloody young or uncertified. Either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On IG, it is at the breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the breaktime podcast. On X, it is at Bagak the D. And on Bluesky, it is at the breaktimepod.bsky.social. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.